Oh, I just can't get enough of getting my magnifying glass and staring at the EU4 map. Today, after almost doing every region within Europe, I'm going to explain to you just how accurate the Nordic countries are in Europa Universalis 4. The EU4 community has been shouting from the hills for Scandinavia to get a big update, and I personally believe when the next EU4 DLC comes out later this year, it will mostly focus on this region and the Baltics. Doing the research for this video, although the Nordic countries don't have the largest amount of inaccuracies in EU4, the historical misrepresentations these nations do have are some of the most interesting I've come across. And maybe in a potential future EU4 patch, some of the suggestions I make in this video could be added into EU4. Also, you now know we're going to Ulm if we get to 100,000 subscribers, but we now may make it into a fan meetup as well. So if you want to see that happen, why not subscribe and make that fan meetup a little bit closer. We're now only a month or two away from getting to that big target. Right, let's get into the video. We are firstly going to look at the map inaccuracies of Greenland, a country that looks far bigger on a map than it actually is, and only around 56,000 people live here, so I'm guessing its manpower isn't the best. In EU4, Greenland is probably one of the most insignificant regions in the game, with two provinces that are poor, underdeveloped, and difficult to colonise. Greenland is the place where EU4 players hardly look at on the map, except if they're on some sort of safari and want to see the polar bear. In historical reality, however, Greenland is more interesting than meets the eye. Centuries before the start date of EU4, the Vikings colonised the area, gaining large amounts of money through the sale of ivory, which had significant value during this time. I've already gone into detail about the Greenland Vikings in another video, which you can check out after this. When I made that video, there was definitely an interesting debate in the comments, and there was a consensus that something needed to be changed in the region. Even if it wasn't entirely historically accurate, it's probably good just to make the gameplay a bit better. The reason there's a debate is because the end of the Greenland Vikings is not entirely clear. The last documented recording of the Greenland Vikings was a wedding in 1408. The extinction of the Greenland Vikings is put between the dates of 1450 and 1500, which nearly encompasses the EU4 start date. There's still a lot of mystery behind what exactly happened to them, which I think piques people's interest in the Greenland Vikings, and therefore should be added into the game in some way. One person suggests Denmark or Norway should have a mission that allows them to gain contact with the Viking settlers and instantly get a Norse colony with 100 population. Someone else suggested the Greenland Vikings should be a starting nation with one of the worst disasters in EU4, and it can lead to their extinction in 20 years. I think provided Paradox do have a Nordic DLC, they should add something about the Greenland Vikings. Moving on to the islands above the British Isles, I firstly don't think Iceland should be changed to be a vassal, but maybe some events can be added to Iceland surrounding their significant exports of fish to the British Isles, as around the start date of EU4, historians refer to this time in Iceland as the English Age, due to the prominence of trade with the English. Looking at the Faroe Islands, Orkney, and the Shetland Islands, all these should be under the Jarldom of Orkney, and the person in charge at the time was William Sinclair, who was actually a Scottish nobleman, but pledged his loyalty to the Kalmar Union. His family is surrounded in a bit of mystery, and not much is known about their lives, but one theory suggests his father went to the New World before Christopher Columbus, although this is definitely heavily disputed. In my opinion, two things historically can be added into EU4. Firstly, 2 years after the start date, William built a famous chapel that can still be seen today, so maybe an event could be put into EU4 surrounding this. Secondly, when Christopher of Denmark died in 1448, the Earl of Orkney was a potential candidate for the vacant throne, so again, something could be added into EU4 surrounding this event, with some sort of personal union between Denmark and Orkney. In my opinion, Orkney should be a vassal state, but it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. Moving on to the European mainland, we will begin with Norway. There's only a few things I'll change in this country. Historically, in the north of Norway, as well as Sweden and Novgorod, the land wasn't actually controlled by the Kalmar Union at the time, and instead it was largely made up of these tribesmen. It would be more historically accurate to have it as a tribal tag, with no one in control of these provinces. But then again, would it make the game any better? I'm personally not sure it would add that much to the game, and I'm happy how it is now. Another potential historical inaccuracy is Jämtland. Over time, it's been a special territory between Norway and Sweden, and has switched allegiances a number of times. The flag of a silver moose depicts how it's torn between Norway and Sweden, attacked from both sides. It was self-governing for a period of time, and actually was a republic, but it did get integrated by Norway in the 12th century. Having said this, Paradox at the very least should make Jämtland a releasable nation for Norway. The Jämtist people maintain some form of self-governance, so I think it's only fair to add this province as a small releasable tag, or maybe even a vassal. Crossing over a border to Sweden, there is one potential vassal you could add at the start date of EU4, which is in the east of Sweden, known as Viborg. The Viborg castle and the large surrounding fief became a virtually autonomous principality. Its governors were enriched with the incomes of the county, and they were generally from some of the most powerful families of the kingdom. They also enjoyed large administrative powers, since they were a significant distance away from the capital. All these things made them practically independent rulers. Around the start date of EU4, a man by the name of Charles, who would become King of Sweden in 1448, was in charge of Viborg Castle and had an independent court. He also had his own foreign policy and independently handled negotiations with the Hanseatic League. A rich and interesting history like this should be acknowledged in the game, and Charles should be in charge of this vassal in 1444. The final country we're going to talk about is none other than Denmark, where there are two potential EU4 map inaccuracies here. The first one I'm going to talk about is the goat-loving people of Gotland. Paradox have definitely added more here than other parts of the Nordic regions, since Gotland has its own tag, and at the start date of EU4, the Gotland province is in rebellion, so there's also some thought for Gotland at the start of the game. The reason Gotland is rebellious is because at the end of the 1430s, King Eric of Pomerania was expelled from both his Danish and Swedish kingdoms, and withdrew to Gotland, and he became governor of the island. Around the time of EU4, he used Gotland to attack old enemies at sea. His energetic and clearly vengeful undertakings against mainly Swedes, Danes and Hanseatics clearly should be represented in EU4, and perhaps would make this region more interesting. I'd like to see Gotland as an EU4 pirate nation, and I think EU4 players would really enjoy this sort of gameplay, so let's maybe add them into the game. So all in all, the amount of map inaccuracies isn't extensive in the Nordic countries, but they are definitely the most interesting, from the Gotland pirates, to the Silver Moose survivalists, and finally the New World Vikings. If my prediction is correct, then the next EU4 DLC will be focused on this region, and maybe perhaps some of these suggestions I've made in this video will actually be added into the game. But what do you guys think though? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe. Shout out to our Patreons, JDo52, Kargon, Henriki and Flyerton.